Captain Vorthek's clawed fingers traced the holographic display floating above his command chair. The numbers glowed a soft blue against the dark metal of the mercenary vessel's bridge. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he studied the contract details. For the third time that morning, something felt wrong about this assignment, so he could not place exactly what troubled him. The payment amount pulsed at the bottom of the screen. 3 million galactic credits for a simple data retrieval. Mission: Vorthok had led raids against fortified military installations for less money. His crew had stormed heavily defended corporate facilities and walked away with smaller payouts. Yet here was a contract offering premium. Warrior wages for what appeared to be nothing more than intimidating a small human colony, Captain called. Thekmer from across the bridge. The insectoid warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the ship's artificial lights. Forearms worked with mechanical precision as he cleaned his plasma rifle. This human settlement, they have military defenses. Vorthok scrolled through the intelligence briefing. Negative. Standard civilian colony. Population approximately 2,000. No orbital defenses, no military installations. They grow food and mine basic minerals. Valana's crystalline form shifted from deep purple to amber as she processed this information. Her energy-based species communicated through color changes, and the amber indicated confusion. Then why does the Galactic Consortium fear them enough? To hire us? The question hung in the air like smoke from a dying star. Vorthok had been asking himself the same thing since receiving the contract 12 hours ago. The consortium representative who had delivered the assignment had been nervous. Sweating through his expensive suit despite the ship's comfortable temperature, his hands had trembled slightly as he transferred the payment authorization codes. Perhaps. Humans breed faster than intelligence reports suggested Grex, the ship's gunner. His rocky, stone-like features remained impassive as always. Maybe they fear population expansion. Maris' mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter. Among his kind, humans live barely 80 standard years. They reproduce slowly and die quickly. I have stepped on insects that posed greater threats. The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Vorthek's crew consisted of veterans from a dozen different conflicts across the galaxy. Crystalline warriors of Zephyr Prime survived the toxic battlefields of Mordian the Seventh and emerged victorious from the siege of Station Omega. Each of them had earned their place through blood and skill. Dekmer single-handedly held off an entire battalion of Caraxian shock troops during the Battle of Helios Station. His forearms could fire different weapons simultaneously, while his enhanced reflexes made him nearly impossible to hit. Valana could channel pure energy through her crystalline matrix, creating devastating attacks that could melt through reinforced armor. Grex's stone-like hide had deflected direct hits from ship-mounted cannons. Yet their employer seemed terrified of a human farming colony. "Read the mission parameters again," Vorthok ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded respect across 3 sectors of space, tech, more access the file through his neural interface. Minimize contact with colonists. Extract stolen research data quickly. Do not engage in prolonged ground operations. Avoid unnecessary civilian casualties. He paused, his compound eyes reflecting the bridge lights. The emphasis on speed appears unusual for a routine operation. Unusual indeed, agreed Valana, her form shifting to a worried shade of orange. When did the consortium begin caring about civilian casualties? They have leveled entire cities to protect their interests. Vorthok stood and began pacing the bridge's length. His heavy boots struck the metal deck with rhythmic precision. Something in the mission briefing bothered him beyond the excessive. Payment. The consortium representative had repeated certain phrases multiple times during their meeting. Quick extraction had been mentioned 7 times. Minimal engagement had come up even more frequently. The target was a place called New Haven, established on Kepler 4, for to be approximately 15 standard years ago. The planet sat in a habitable zone of its star with Earth-like gravity and breathable atmosphere. According to the files, the colonists had chosen it specifically for its peaceful, isolated location, far from major trade routes. What exactly did these humans steal? Asked Grex, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. Vorthok consulted the briefing materials, medical research data, cellular regeneration techniques developed by a Dr. Hyun-Woo Kim. The consortium claims he violated his employment contract by sharing proprietary information, medical research. Thus mandibles clicked again. We are being paid warrior wages to retrieve medicine formulas. The absurdity of the situation struck them all simultaneously. They were among the most feared mercenaries in the galaxy, specialists in combat operations and hostile takeovers. Their reputation preceded them into every conflict zone. Enemy forces surrendered rather than face the crew of the Void's Edge. Yet here they were, preparing to intimidate farmers and doctors. Over stolen medical data. Perhaps, suggested Valana, the research involves biological weapons. That would explain the consortium's concern. Vorthok accessed deeper files in the mission database. Dr. Hyun-Woo Kim had been a respected researcher in cellular biology. His work focused on accelerating natural healing processes and extending cellular lifespan. The stolen data apparently contained breakthrough techniques for treating degenerative diseases across multiple species. Life-saving medicine, Vorthok muttered. The doctor stole life-saving medicine. The implications settled over the bridge like a cold fog. The Galactic Consortium was paying premium rates to suppress medical advances that could save millions of lives. They wanted mercenaries to terrorize peaceful colonists who had tried to share healing knowledge with the galaxy. Captain, said Detchmer quietly, why would the consortium wish to suppress medical advances? The answer was obvious, though none of them wanted to speak it aloud. Medical scarcity meant higher profits. Controlled treatments meant dependent populations. The consortium's pharmaceutical divisions generated enormous revenue from diseases that Dr. Kim's research could cure permanently. We are not paid to question our employer's motives, Vorthok said finally, though his voice lacked conviction. We complete the mission as contracted. But doubt had taken root in his mind like a parasite. Throughout his career, he had told himself that he was simply a professional soldier. He completed contracts, collected payments, and moved on to the next assignment. The morality of his employer's goals was not his concern. This mission felt different. Something in the consortium representative's manner. The excessive payment and the strange emphasis on speed suggested they were walking into a situation none of them understood. Prepare for orbital insertion, Vorthok commanded. We reach Kepler 44 to be. In 6 hours, full combat readiness, but remember the mission parameters. Quick extraction, minimal engagement. As his crew dispersed to their preparation duties, Vorthok remained on the bridge, staring at the starfield ahead. Somewhere among those distant points of light waited a small human colony that had their employer frightened enough to hire the most expensive mercenaries in the galaxy. Soon, he would discover why. The transport ship's engines roared as it descended through Kepler 442b's atmosphere. Captain Vorthok gripped his weapon tighter as the vessel shuddered through the planet's outer wind layers. Through the viewing port, he could see the human settlement of New Haven spread below them like a peaceful garden. Green fields stretched in neat rows, small houses dotted the landscape, and a central plaza marked the heart of the community. Visual contact established, reported Grex from the pilot's seat. No defensive installations visible, no military vehicles, no weapons emplacements. That Khmer checked his plasma rifle one final time. Confirmed. Settlement appears completely defenseless. The ship touched down in the central plaza with a heavy thud that shook the ground. Steam hissed from the landing struts as they adjusted to the planet's gravity. Through the ship's sensors, they could detect human life forms moving about the settlement, but no signs of panic or evacuation. Remember, Vorthok addressed his team as they prepared to disembark. Quick extraction, minimal engagement. These humans should surrender immediately once they see our superior firepower. The cargo bay doors opened with a mechanical whine. Bright sunlight streamed into the ship's interior, carrying with it the scent of growing plants and clean air. Vorthok stepped onto the planet's surface first, followed by his crew in standard combat formation. The scene that greeted them defied all expectations. The human settlement continued its daily activities as if nothing unusual had occurred. An elderly woman sat on her porch, rocking gently in a wooden chair, while knitting what appeared to be a colorful blanket. Children played in a nearby field, their laughter carrying across the plaza. Farmers worked in their gardens, tending to rows of vegetables with careful attention. Not a single human appeared frightened by the arrival of heavily armed alien mercenaries. "This is wrong," muttered Valana, her crystalline form shifting to a confused shade of yellow. "Where is the terror? Where are the screams?" This Merc's forearms held different weapons, each aimed at potential threats. But the humans simply continued their peaceful activities. A young mother pushed a baby carriage past their formation, nodding politely as if greeting neighbors on a morning walk. "Perhaps they do not recognize the danger," suggested Grex, his stone-like features scanning the area for hidden threats. Before Vorthok could respond, a human male approached their group with unhurried steps. He appeared to be in his 60s, with graying hair and weathered hands that spoke of years spent working the soil. His clothes were simple farming garments, clean but worn from honest labor. In his hands he carried a steaming ceramic cup. "Good morning," the human said in a pleasant voice. "Welcome to New Haven. I'm Deho, the settlement coordinator. Beautiful day, isn't it? You folks seem to be looking for something. How can we help you?" The casualness of the greeting struck the mercenaries. Like a physical blow, mandibles clicked rapidly in confusion. His compound eyes had witnessed the fear responses of hundreds of different species across the galaxy. Panic was universal. Air was instinctive. Yet this human stood before them as calm as morning mist. "You are not afraid," Vorthok observed, his reptilian voice carrying a note of bewilderment. Deho took a sip from his cup and smiled. "Should I be? You haven't threatened anyone yet? In fact, you seem quite professional. Military bearing, disciplined formation. You're obviously here on business." The human's eyes were sharp and alert, but not with fear. Instead, they held the quiet confidence of someone who had seen much in life and found little that could surprise him anymore. "We demand immediate surrender of the stolen medical research data," Vorthok announced, his voice carrying across the plaza with practiced authority. "Comply, and your settlement will be spared." Several humans in the vicinity turned to look at the commotion, but none showed signs of alarm. Instead, they watched with the mild interest of people observing a minor neighborhood dispute. Deho nodded thoughtfully and took another sip of his beverage. "Ah, you must be talking about Dr. Hyanwu's work. That wasn't stolen, though I understand why someone might describe it that way. He shared it freely because he believed people were dying unnecessarily across the galaxy. Good man, our doctor. Couldn't stand to see suffering when he had the knowledge to help." The human paused, studying the mercenaries with those sharp eyes. "You've traveled a long way to get here. Would you like some coffee while we discuss this?" "It's a local blend we've been developing. Quite good, actually." Dekmar's weapons wavered slightly. In 30 years of mercenary work, he had never encountered a response like this. Victims were supposed to beg for mercy, offer bribes, or attempt to flee. They were not supposed to offer refreshments. "Look around you," Deho continued, gesturing to the settlement with his free hand. "Do you see anyone running? Do you hear screaming? My people aren't afraid because they trust that reasonable beings can work out reasonable solutions." A woman working in a nearby garden looked up from her plants and waved cheerfully at the armed group. "Good morning," she called out. "I'm Boyoung. Welcome to New Haven. Are you staying for lunch?" Valana's crystalline form pulsed with threatening energy, shifting to an angry red color. "This is not a negotiation. We take what we came for." The woman named Bo Young tilted her head curiously. "Oh, are you having a difficult day?" "Sometimes when people are upset, they need to express themselves forcefully. It's perfectly natural." The casual fearlessness of the humans was more unsettling than any weapon the mercenaries had ever faced. Children peered around corners with bright, curious eyes rather than terror. An elderly man continued reading a book on his porch occasionally, glancing over with mild interest. "You don't understand," Vorthok said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. "We are armed. We are dangerous. We have destroyed entire military installations." Deho nodded understandingly. "Of course. You have your job to do. Someone hired you to come here and retrieve something they believe belongs to them. I respect that." but maybe we can find a solution that works for everyone. The human sat down, his cup on a nearby table, and clasped his hands behind his back. These medical advances that Dr. Hyenwu shared, they could save millions of lives across the galaxy. Treatment for diseases that have plagued civilizations for centuries. Healing techniques that could end unnecessary suffering. The consortium wants their property returned, Grex rumbled. Property, Deho repeated softly. Is knowledge property when it can save lives? Is healing property when beings are dying? These are philosophical questions, I suppose, but they're worth considering. A small crowd of humans had gathered at the edges of the plaza, but they maintained a respectful distance. They watched the proceedings with interest, but without fear, as if this were a public debate rather than a potential conflict. You're not like other humans we've encountered, Thekmer observed. Day-Ho smiled. How many humans have you actually met? Most species in the galaxy know us only through reputation and second-hand stories. We're relatively new to the galactic community, so misconceptions are common. The settlement coordinator picked up his cup again and took a thoughtful sip. Perhaps you'd like to meet Dr. Hyenwu himself. He's working in the medical center this morning. I'm sure he'd be happy to explain his research and why he felt it was important to share it freely. The morning sun climbed higher over New Haven as Captain Vorthek's patience finally snapped. The humans' calm responses had begun to feel like mockery. These primitive colonists were supposed to cower before superior alien firepower, not offer coffee and pleasant conversation. His reptilian features twisted with frustration as he watched children continue playing in the distance, completely unaware that dangerous mercenaries stood in their settlement. Enough, Vorthok snarled, his voice cutting through the peaceful morning air. Clearly do not understand the gravity of your situation. Allow me to demonstrate. He raised his clawed hand and pointed toward a large storage building at the edge of the plaza. The structure appeared to hold farming equipment and supplies, though nothing essential to the colony's survival but significant enough to make his point. Clear. Target that building, he commanded his crew. Full power. Dekmer's forearms moved with practiced precision, each wielding a different weapon. His primary plasma rifle hummed to life, its energy core glowing bright blue, B'Elanna-esque crystalline. Form shifted to a brilliant white as she channeled raw energy through her matrix. Grex hefted his heavy cannon, the weapon's barrel extending with mechanical clicks. The weapons discharged simultaneously in a coordinated burst of devastating firepower. Plasma bolts, energy beams, and explosive shells struck the storage building. From multiple angles, structure vanished in a brilliant explosion of light and heat, reduced to nothing but smoldering debris and scattered metal fragments in mere seconds. The demonstration was impressive, even by mercenary standards. The coordinated attack had been perfectly executed, showing the kind of firepower that had leveled military installations across the galaxy. Surely now the humans would understand their helplessness and surrender, but the response was not what Vorthok expected. Instead of screaming in panic, the humans reacted with smooth efficiency. Within moments of the explosion, people emerged. From nearby buildings carrying medical supplies and emergency equipment, they moved with purpose and coordination. Like dancers following a well-rehearsed routine, an elderly human woman appeared with a portable medical kit, heading directly toward the blast site to check for injuries. A group of younger humans began organizing a bucket brigade to contain small fires that had spread to nearby vegetation. Others started clearing debris with tools that seemed to appear from nowhere. Injury report called out a human male who had materialized beside the ruins. Anyone hurt by the blast? Minor burns on 2 people, replied another human, already treating a woman who had been too close to the explosion. Nothing serious. They'll be fine. The wounded were quickly and efficiently treated with medical techniques that pressed even the battle-hardened mercenaries. The humans worked with calm precision, their movements economical and effective. There was no wasted motion, no confusion, no panic. Damage assessment complete, announced someone from the debris field. Storage building completely destroyed. No structural damage to surrounding buildings. Fire contained and extinguished. Vorthok stared in disbelief. The humans had responded to his demonstration of force like a well-trained military unit responding to an enemy attack. Their emergency procedures had been flawless, their medical care professional, their coordination perfect. Oh, that's Marasp. His mandibles clicking in confusion. How did they organize so quickly? Before anyone could answer, a human woman approached the mercenaries with the same unhurried pace that Deho had used earlier. She appeared to be in her 40s, with dark hair tied back in a practical style and clothing that suggested she worked in some kind of technical field. "Are you having a difficult day?" she asked, her voice carrying genuine concern. "Sometimes when people are stressed, they need to break things. It's perfectly natural."
That the woman's
Calm demeanor in the face of their overwhelming firepower was more unsettling than any weapon they had ever encountered. She looked at the smoking ruins of the storage building and then back at the mercenaries with understanding rather than fear. "I'm June," she continued. "I work in our engineering department. It was quite an impressive display of coordinated firepower. Your weapon systems appear to be very advanced." This frustration boiled over. His forearms moved with lightning. Speed, grabbing Gion's arm in a grip that could crush bone. His species was known for their strength, and intimidation through physical force had never failed him before. "You will show proper respect," he hissed, his compound eyes glowing with anger. Did not resist the grip. She did not cry out in pain or beg for mercy. Instead, she looked at Thekmer with patient understanding, as if dealing with a confused child having a tantrum. But something else happened in that moment.
something that made the hair on the back of Warthek's neck stand up despite his reptilian
Physiology. Every human in sight suddenly went very still. The change was subtle but unmistakable. The people who had been clearing debris stopped their work but remained in position. The medical personnel treating the injured paused but kept their hands near their supplies. The children who had been playing in the distance were no longer visible, having melted away like morning mist. These weren't helpless prey animals anymore. The casual, friendly demeanor remained, but underneath it lay something else. Something that made veteran warriors who had faced death across a dozen star systems suddenly feel very uncomfortable. Goon gently but firmly removed the spry's grip with surprising strength. Her hand moved with practiced efficiency, applying pressure to specific points on his arm until his fingers loosened involuntarily. The technique was so smooth and professional that it was clearly not the first time she had dealt with aggressive behavior. "We've all been there," she said softly, patting his arm sympathetically. "Violence is sometimes how people express frustration when they can't find the words. It's okay. You're among friends here." Thekmer stepped back, his weapons trembling slightly. The casual way she had broken his grip suggested training and experience that went far beyond what farmers and colonists should possess. "How did you do that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do what?" Jiun replied innocently. "Remove your hand? It's just basic pressure point application. Anyone can learn it." Forthek's eyes swept the plaza, and he realized with growing alarm that the humans had somehow repositioned themselves. They hadn't appeared to move, but they were now positioned at every strategic point around the plaza. Near the landing ship, beside the various exit routes, in elevated positions that would provide good sightlines. Their posture remained relaxed and friendly, but their eyes held a calculating awareness that made even experienced mercenaries uncomfortable. They were being evaluated, measured, assessed by minds that understood tactical situations far better than simple colonists should. "You're not farmers," Grex observed, his stone-like features showing rare emotion. "We are farmers," Deho said, appearing beside them with a fresh cup of coffee. "We grow excellent vegetables. We also raise livestock, maintain our equipment, and handle all the normal tasks of colonial life." He took a sip of his drink and looked around at his fellow colonists. "But we weren't always farmers. Most of us had other careers before we came. Here seeking peace." The settlement coordinator's eyes met Vorthak's directly. "Perhaps you'd like to know why your employers were so nervous about sending you here. Why they emphasized speed and minimal contact. Why they paid you premium rates for what should have been a simple intimidation mission." The morning breeze carried the scent of growing things and wood smoke from the destroyed building. But underneath those pleasant smells, Vorthok detected something else. The subtle tension of predators pretending to be prey, of wolves masquerading as sheep. "What are you?" he asked quietly. Deho smiled and gestured toward the settlement around them. We're retired. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across New Haven's plaza as the truth began to emerge like water seeping through cracks in stone. Captain Vorthok watched with growing unease as Deho set down his coffee cup and rolled up his sleeves to help. With clearing the debris from the destroyed storage building, the simple act revealed something that made the mercenary captain's blood run cold. Deho's arms were covered in scars. Not the random marks of accident or disease, but the deliberate patterns left by weapons, fire, and battlefield injuries. Vorthok recognized plasma burns from Zephyrian rifles, the distinctive marks of Caraxian blade wounds, and most disturbing of all, the parallel lines that could only come from Vorthok's own species' claws. Those scars, Thekmer whispered, his compound eyes focusing on the marks. The Battle of Helios Station, you were there. Deho paused in his work and looked down at his arms as if seeing the scars for the first time. Ah, those old things. Yes, I was there. Terrible business, that conflict. So many good people lost on both sides. The Battle of Helios Station had been one of the bloodiest conflicts in recent galactic history. An entire star system had been devastated during the fighting. Military historians still studied the tactical brilliance displayed by both sides, particularly the human forces who had somehow held their ground against overwhelming odds. You held the eastern defensive line, Grek said slowly, his stone-like features showing recognition. For 6 days against impossible numbers. 6 days and 14 hours, Deho corrected gently. But who's counting? We did what was necessary. To protect the civilian evacuation ships? That's what soldiers do. Goon approached the group carrying a toolkit to help with the repairs. Her movements were fluid and economical, the kind of efficiency that comes from years of training and experience. I should probably mention that I used to do security work before retiring here, she said casually. Security work? Valana S. crystalline. Form shifted to a worried shade of orange. Fleet command, actually, Goon replied as if discussing the weather. I commanded the 3rd Human Defense Fleet during the Outer Rim Wars. Nothing too exciting, really. Just a lot of long patrols and the occasional skirmish with raiders. His mandibles clicked frantically as he accessed his neural database. The 3rd Human Defense Fleet had been legendary among military circles. During the siege of Proxima 7, they had held off an entire enemy armada with a single damaged vessel. The tactical maneuvers employed during that battle were still taught in military academies across the galaxy. Your Admiral Park June, he said in a voice barely above a whisper. You held off the entire Caraxian fleet with one ship. June smiled and began sorting through her tools. That old story gets exaggerated every time someone tells it. We had a good crew and got lucky with some creative engineering solutions. Caraxians were probably just having an off day, the mercenaries. Exchanged glances of growing alarm. The casual way she dismissed one of the most famous military victories in galactic history was somehow more terrifying than any boast could have been. An elderly human man approached carrying a bucket of water to help with the cleanup. He moved, with the careful precision of someone who had learned to conserve energy for when it mattered most. His weathered face held the kind of calm that only comes from having seen everything life could throw at a person. Need any help here? He asked, setting down the bucket. This is Woojin Deho, said by way of introduction. He runs our agricultural program, best farmer in 3 sectors. Woojin chuckled and wiped his hands on a cloth. I grow decent vegetables, but I'm better with chickens. They're simpler than people, easier to understand. Grek studied the old man's posture and movement patterns. Something about the way he carried himself triggered recognition in the mercenaries' tactical database. Your Ghost Unit 7, he said suddenly. The old farmer's eyes sharpened slightly, though his expression remained mild. That was a long time ago. Different life, different name. Prefer growing things to destroying them these days. Ghost. Unit 7 had been the most feared Special Forces team in human military history. They had completed missions that other units considered impossible, operating behind enemy lines for months at a time. Their success rate had been perfect, their methods legendary, their members completely unknown to the public. You eliminated the entire draconian command structure on Kepler 186, Falana said, her form shifting to deep purple with fear. Like I said, Woojin replied mildly. Different life. I find that raising chickens is much more rewarding than the alternative. A woman emerged from the settlement's library carrying a tablet and stylus. She appeared to be in her 50s, with the kind of quiet demeanor that suggested she spent most of her time with books and data rather than people. Her clothes were simple and practical, the uniform of someone who valued function over fashion. "I've been tracking the damage assessment," she said, approaching the group. "Material losses are minimal, no structural damage to essential systems. We can have everything repaired within 48 hours. Young Mi handles our record keeping," Daeho explained. "She's very good with information management." The woman named Young Mi smiled shyly. "I enjoy working with data. It's peaceful. Compared to my previous job, which was," Vorthok asked, though he was beginning to dread the answer. "Military intelligence," Young Mi replied quietly. "I analyze the enemy communication patterns and strategic movements. Pattern recognition mostly. Nothing too dramatic. Dekmar's database." Search revealed that Young Mi had been responsible for breaking the Centauri cipher, the most sophisticated encryption system ever developed. Her intelligence analyses had prevented 3 major wars and ended 2 others before they could fully develop. "You ended the Rigel conflict," he said in amazement. "I provided information that helped negotiators reach a peaceful solution," Young Mi corrected. "Violence is rarely the best answer to complex problems." A middle-aged human man jogged over from the medical center, carrying a bag of supplies. His movements were quick and efficient, the kind of controlled urgency that medical professionals develop when dealing with emergencies. "Heard there were some injuries from the explosion," he said, immediately beginning to examine the people who had been treated earlier. "I'm Kyung-soo, the settlement doctor. Let me take a look at those burns." His examination was thorough and professional, his techniques advanced beyond what a simple colonial doctor should possess. The way he worked suggested extensive experience. "With battlefield injuries and trauma surgery, you're very skilled," Grex observed. Kyung-soo smiled while checking a patient's vital signs. "I've had plenty of practice. Combat medicine teaches you to work fast and efficiently. Lives depend on quick decisions." "Combat medicine?" Valana asked. "I was a battlefield surgeon during the Titan Wars," Kyung-soo explained while applying a new bandage. 3 tours, 7 different theaters of operation. You learn to work under pressure when plasma bolts are flying overhead. The Titan Wars had been among the most brutal conflicts in galactic history. The casualty rates had been staggering. And the medical personnel who served during those campaigns had developed legendary skills in emergency surgery and trauma treatment. "We came here for peace," June said, watching the mercenaries with calm assessment. "We've seen enough war to last several lifetimes. We've hoped to grow vegetables, raise families, and forget about the violence." She gestured around the settlement, where children played in the distance while their parents worked in gardens and workshops. "This is what we wanted. A quiet place where we could build something positive instead of destroying things." The humans' casual competence, their ability to remain calm under pressure, and their instant tactical coordination weren't learned behaviors. They were muscle memory, the kind of automatic responses that come from years of training and experience. These weren't helpless colonists. They were veterans who had fought in wars that made the mercenaries' greatest victories seem like minor skirmishes. "But," added Daeho quietly, picking up his coffee cup again, "we remember how to protect what matters to us." The afternoon sun was beginning to set over New Haven when Captain Vorthok finally reached his breaking point. The revelations about the humans' true nature had shaken him deeply, but he still had a mission to complete. The Galactic Consortium was paying him 3 million credits for the stolen research data, and his reputation as a mercenary leader depended on fulfilling contracts. He raised his plasma weapon and aimed it directly at Daeho's chest. The familiar weight of the gun felt reassuring in his clawed hands, a reminder of the power he still held despite the unsettling discoveries about the colonists. "Enough games," Vorthok snarled, his reptilian voice cutting through the peaceful evening air. "I don't care about your past careers or your war stories. Give me the medical research data now, or I will start executing civilians until you comply." The change in the humans was immediate and absolute. The friendly smiles vanished from their faces like water evaporating in desert heat. The casual, relaxed postures straightened into something that made the mercenaries' combat training look like amateur theater. The warm, welcoming atmosphere that had surrounded the settlement all day disappeared completely. They didn't become monsters. They became something far more terrifying than any beast or savage creature. They became perfectly efficient. Utterly calm professionals who had seen real war and found it tedious. June stepped forward. And when she spoke, her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone who had commanded entire fleets across multiple star systems. You have 3 choices, Captain Vorthok. The transformation in her bearing was complete. This was no longer the friendly engineer who had offered understanding and sympathy. This was Admiral Park Ju-hoon, the woman who had held off impossible odds and emerged victorious from conflicts that had destroyed entire civilizations. First, she continued, her voice steady and professional, you can leave peacefully with your ships intact. You return to your employer, explain that the mission was unsuccessful, and find a new line of work. I recommend agriculture. It's peaceful and rewarding. Vorthek's weapon trembled slightly in his grip. The casual way she discussed his failure, as if it were already decided, was more unnerving than any threat could have been. Second, June said, taking another step forward, you can face us in combat. Though I should mention that the last group of mercenaries who chose that option is still being identified through dental records. The Rigel Consortium sent a full battle group to retrieve some stolen mining equipment about 5 years ago. She paused, her eyes meeting each of the mercenaries in turn. It took our forensic team 3 weeks to sort through the remains. Very messy business. We don't enjoy violence, but we're exceptionally good at it when circumstances require. Mercenaries felt their weapon grips grow slick with nervous perspiration. This merc's forearms shook slightly as he tried to maintain his combat stance. Valana's crystalline form flickered between colors, unable to settle on a single emotional state. Grex's stone-like features showed the first signs of fear they had ever displayed. You're bluffing, Vorthok said, though his voice lacked conviction. You're farmers and doctors? You can't possibly ... Captain, interrupted Wu Jin, the elderly chicken farmer. I've eliminated more enemy combatants than you've ever seen in your entire career. I stopped counting after the first 1,000. These days I prefer raising poultry because chickens don't shoot back. The old man's voice remained mild and pleasant, but his eyes held the kind of cold calculation that made veteran warriors reconsider their life choices. Young-me, the quiet librarian, spoke up from her position near the settlements. Communication Center. I've been monitoring your ship's systems since you landed. Your weapons are impressive, but your defensive grid has 17 exploitable vulnerabilities. I could disable your vessel in approximately 4 minutes using our standard agricultural equipment. Her shy demeanor had vanished, replaced by the analytical precision of someone who had broken the most sophisticated military codes in galactic history. Third, Deho interjected, his voice returning to its earlier warmth. You can stay for dinner and hear about the medical research that could save billions of lives across the galaxy. Dr. Hoyanwu's work on cellular regeneration could revolutionize medicine for every species in the consortium. The settlement coordinator's friendly manner had returned, but now it carried an undertone of strength that made it clear this was not weakness. This was the choice of someone confident enough in their abilities to offer mercy to those who had threatened them. Dr. Hanwu left the consortium because he couldn't stand watching people die from diseases he knew how to cure, Deho continued. His research could extend lifespans, heal injuries that are currently permanent, and eliminate suffering across the galaxy. A figure emerged from the medical center carrying a tablet filled with data. Dr. Hyanwu was younger than most of the other colonists, with the intense focus of someone dedicated to healing rather than warfare. His eyes held the kind of passionate dedication that transcended species barriers. The cellular regeneration process can work on any carbon-based life form, he explained, approaching the group with scientific enthusiasm. Zephyrian crystal structures, Caraxian biological matrices, even your own reptilian physiology, Captain. Imagine soldiers who could heal from battle wounds in hours instead of months. The mercenaries looked at each other, then at the humans who had been trying to spare them from a fight they could never win. These creatures who treated interstellar warfare as just another Tuesday were offering them a chance to become something better than hired killers. The weight of the choice settled on Vorthok's shoulders like a heavy cloak. He could continue with his mission, face these veteran warriors in combat, and likely die in the process. Or he could accept their offer and potentially help save lives across the galaxy. Captain Vorthok slowly lowered his weapon. His clawed hands. Trembling slightly, we would be honored to hear about this research. The transformation in the humans was immediate and welcoming. The military bearing relaxed back into friendly civilian postures. Smiles returned to their faces. And the warm atmosphere of the settlement reasserted itself. Hours later, the mercenaries found themselves sharing a meal with the humans around tables set up in the central plaza. Wu Jin patiently taught Vikmer how to prepare traditional Korean barbecue, showing the insectoid warrior how to marinate meat and control the cooking temperature. The secret is in the timing, Wu Jin explained, turning the meat on the grill. Too fast, and it burns. Too slow, and it becomes tough. Like most things in life, patience produces the best results. Goon entertained the group with war stories that made the mercenaries' greatest victories sound like training exercises. She spoke of battles that had lasted for months, strategic decisions that had saved entire star systems, and conflicts that had shaped the current political landscape of the galaxy. The Titan Wars taught us that victory isn't about destroying your enemy, she said, sipping a cup of local tea. It's about protecting what you value most. We learned to be very, very good at protecting things. As the evening progressed, Dr. Hanwoo shared his research with growing excitement. The medical data revealed treatments that could heal species-specific diseases, extend natural lifespans, and restore functionality to damaged organs and limbs. This isn't just about humans, he explained, showing holographic displays of cellular structures. This could help every intelligent species in the galaxy live longer, healthier lives. That's worth more than any corporate profit margin. Humans' greatest weapon wasn't their technology or tactics. It was their ability to remain fundamentally decent people who had simply learned to be very, very good at protecting what mattered to them. As the evening ended, the mercenaries transmitted the medical research data freely across the galaxy, finally understanding why even the most feared warriors spoke of humans in hushed, respectful tones. They weren't monsters or gods, or simply people who had chosen to be better than their circumstances required. The end.